Good evening. It is Thursday, September 28th, 2017. My name is Jacob,
My name's Max.
and we are the Proteus Podcast, ideas in all shapes and forms. How you doing today, Max?
I'm good. The weather is great here in this part of Texas. It's cool and moist, and most importantly, it's not 100 degrees in September.
It is not 100 degrees in September, which sounds like the start of a poem, to be honest.
Actually, you know what? 100 degrees be a good name for a band.
100 degrees in September.
We ought to copyright that. 100 degrees in September.
It's going to be our Metallica cover band. It's like, why?
That'll be the day.
No reason. Just
No reason. Let's keep moving.
keep it moving on. So what have you been up to, Max?
D, all of the above.
All of the above, starting Metallica cover band and enjoying the weather.
Among other things. Anyways. Well, you said it's September 28th.
It is September 28th.
Well, late September, you know what that means?
Oh,
First day of pumpkin spice season. Actually, that was probably, a few weeks ago?
I'm trying to act excited.
Yeah, no, whatever. Yeah.
So I've actually had this in my head for a while to just go on Amazon, order in bulk all of the spices that go into pumpkin spice, mix it up, put it in little jars, put a ribbon on it, and sell it for like $12 a jar.
I think there are plenty of hipsters.
There's a
in
possibility that a person could make money doing
You
this.
could stand up front of the
Because,
Starbucks and do it.
it would be an artisan pumpkin spice.
Artisanal spice.
No artisan. There's a different. Anyways, nevertheless, but on the other hand, I don't want to end up with like 12 pounds of pumpkin spice when I order all this stuff and then can't sell it. So,
I don't know. I've heard pumpkin spice is a white girl in yoga pants attracted. So if you keep it all in one place, there's a good chance we could meet some women around here.
It's very
You
dangerous.
have good-looking white women in yoga pants knocking on the door. Well, hey, do you have some pumpkin spice here? How did you know?
Who told you?
Who told you?
This is just weird. But anyways, yeah, speaking of pumpkin spice, that means we're into the fall foods. I actually ate some fall food the other day. Weirdly enough, I went to Subway, and they currently have, at least that day, Thanksgiving dinner as a sandwich for them all intents and purposes. They have this thick-cut turkey, thick-cut roasted turkey with a cranberry mustard. So it's like a spicy brown mustard with cranberry. And I was a little skeptical. I was like, that's going to be weird.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it anyways. Tried it anyways. It's just like eating Thanksgiving dinner. You've got the delicious roasted turkey. You got the bread, which stands as rolls. And then with that cranberry sauce, it gives it all the authenticity of a Thanksgiving a sandwich after Thanksgiving. It was freakishly good. I was impressed with Subway for once. I thought that was really good.
I might actually have to darken their doorway.
Like I said, I was crazy skeptical because I was like, cranberry spicy mustard. It's gonna be sweet, but but it's actually really good. It goes together surprisingly well.
Interesting. Well, I will chalk one up to Subway.
So, I think they just call it, like the fall thick cut turkey sandwich or something.
Give us your money.
They didn't call it Thanksgiving dinner per se, but that's what it tasted like to me.
Well, it doesn't come with all the disappointment of having to hang around some of your family who you haven't seen.
Oddly enough, no. So,
you can't
Thanksgiving dinner without all the emotional guilt.
They don't make that condiment to rub on your sandwich.
Thank God.
Yep. So speaking of food, I don't know if y'all know this, but being a very Anglo-white person, I really like spicy. Well, not necessarily. I like spicy food, but I like Mexican food in all its shapes and forms. And so my mom, who is a very interesting lady in and of herself, who was a avid gardener, and a cook, has decided that she's going to attempt to make mole from scratch. And I think Jake has an interesting story that's going to segue into this about mole.
I have extremely, extremely strong feelings about mole because being extremely white and from a part of the world where they don't make Mexican food very often, the way I experienced mole for the first time constituted a dirty trick. Let me give you the whole. Let me paint you a word picture. We got invited when I was a kid to go to this new Mexican restaurant in Billings, Montana, which is very far from Mexico. It was your first hint that something's going to go awry. But anyways, it's billed as like this authentic Mexican restaurant. We go in there. It's sort of a fancier place. Sit down, nice. It's not like a grab and go burrito shop or anything. This
not
is
a cantina
sort of more upper class dining, but Mexican food. Anyways, so we're reading the menu, which is got all these fancy Spanish names on everything. and a description in English, and I don't know what I want because I've never eaten more Mexican food than Taco Bell at that age, so you can understand. Not really setting myself up well. So anyways, I'm reading the menu, and I read chicken and mole. Don't understand Spanish, don't know these other words after mole, after chicken and moles, but the description says chicken in a spicy sauce.
Spicy sauce, eh?
In a spicy sauce, and me being like 10 and having eaten at Taco Bell, I think spicy. So kind of like the hot spicy sauce, packets at Taco Bell,
packets,
a chili pack, in a chili sauce of some kind, spicy. Little do I know that spicy in this context includes cocoa powder. Now, I don't know, I can't speak to the quality of the mole I ate that day, but I thought it was horrible because it's bitter. It's got that cocoa powder that's not really cut with anything, and so it's just like, it's bitter and unpleasant and chicken. So it says chicken in a brown sauce that tastes like alum, because alum and cocoa powder taste about the same when they're raw. Anyways, so that was my sum total experience with mole, and I'll never touch it again because it was awful. Like, it's not something I liked then, and I just can't bring myself to try it again because I feel like even if it's better than that, it's not going to be great. So it's a sort of a truth in advertising thing for me. It's like, you're going to have to describe some of the spices. When you say in a spicy sauce, be like, with using, these spices. Give me a hint that I'm going to be buying cocoa powder with my meal. But that's my experience with mole. So I'm kudos to Max for being willing to try anyone's mole because...
Well, just for the record, folks, I've had great mole and I have had truly horrendous mole. And there's, many shades in between. I can't speak to the quality of this, but it can be deceptive. You think, oh, well, spicy sauce, but it's a native thing. It's not a Spanish thing. It's something that the natives, folks in Mexico, cooked up in the Yucatan and in that part of the world.
But on the other hand, some of those natives did do human sacrifices. So we do know they didn't have the best taste.
That's a very good point. Well, anyways, but moving along, what else does fall mean?
Fall? Besides pumpkin spice season?
Well, that's the most obvious one.
We did chili roasting recently.
That's a good one. I had totally forgotten about that.
They roasted chilies for like a week over at the other store here in town. I missed out on all of that, thankfully.
That means smoked turkey season.
Smoked meats season.
True, actually.
This is the time of year where you start a fire, go stand out in the cold and watch nothing happen for several hours and produce delicious smoked meats.
Well, actually, I do start the fire, but you know what I do before I start the fire? Well, I mean, technically I put pants on and a jacket.
One would assume. But one would hope.
I don't dash out there in my underwear and, oh, it's cold, light the fire, oh, run back inside. I've started this tradition for the past
It's only because you live in town.
Well, it's a little cold outside. I started this tradition of having a glass of brandy or Armagnac, which is very similar to brandy. We won't split hairs over this. I usually get up, put my pants on, and have a shot of brandy to start the day off, and then light the fire. And as they say, the rest is history.
Clearly, I'm in the wrong line of hobbies if it doesn't involve day drinking and fire.
Well, day drinking and fire.
What? You just told me.
This is true.
Get up, put your pants on, drink a glass of Armagnac, and go light a fire. This is clearly I'm in the wrong line of hobbies.
Now, to me, that's despite the French origin of the liquor, that might be one of the most American things you can do in the morning. So I want the folks to know I don't generally day drink during the week or even on the weekend, but during the holiday season, family comes around.
And you kind of have to do a little day drinking.
And sometimes day drinking is good for us all in moderation.
This is the only option for sanity.
It keeps me from being booked into the local county jail and fighting too often with the family, so on and so forth. And it generally makes the overall holiday experience more pleasurable.
So here's a completely unrelated question. But I've run into this comment a lot of times is, everyone should learn to be able to cook one meal, but spaghetti doesn't count.
Right.
Why doesn't spaghetti count?
That's a very good question.
I've seen that a lot of times. Learn to cook one meal, but spaghetti doesn't count. And I think I have an answer. And I think it's because to a lot of people, cooking spaghetti consists of boiling some noodles and warming up a jar of sauce.
Yeah.
In which case, spaghetti doesn't count. On the other hand, if you craft your sauce from scratch from fine quality ingredients, Does spaghetti now count?
It does. I would say it does because I've seen some. My old man used to do that, and he made an all-day spaghetti. And that man, like, he turned into an Italian for the day. And he was cantankerous, and he would swat you with a wooden spoon, and it was like it was like watching the drama unfold in the kitchen. But I will give him this: the spaghetti was arguably the best I've ever, some of the best I've ever had, and in that context, I would say it counts as cooking.
I think so. I think that's where that argument comes from, that spaghetti doesn't count, is because of jarred sauces, which are loaded with sugar and are ridiculous. And even making a not all-day spaghetti sauce is not particularly difficult. Have you ever had my spaghetti sauce, Max?
Not in recent years. I don't.
In the previous decade, I think you might have had some, but maybe. That's not an all-day spaghetti sauce, but it's pretty darn decent, and by a lot of people's opinion. I think it's okay, and my friends do too. So there's that. But I think that if you actually make something more or less from scratch, that absolutely counts.
I would agree with that. You don't make your noodles by hand.
No,
that's good.
I don't have the tools or the patience.
Well, that's good. That means you have a life.
Yeah, I can understand making your own pasta noodles, but on the other hand, ain't nobody got time for that, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But I am a firm believer in learn to cook your favorite meal. Like, if your favorite food is lasagna, sit down and learn how to do it. It's not that hard. And honestly, a lot of cooking isn't that hard. People that say, oh, I burn everything I cook. Well, you probably want to reevaluate your paying attention capabilities. But, turn the heat down, actually stay there while you do it, and you'll learn to cook something. But, or if you want to learn to cook a roast, cooking a roast is really easy. As long as you remember to get up and take it out of the oven when the timer goes off, you should be all right. And there's more difficult things, like if your favorite thing to eat is creme brulee, you're going to, some stepping stones in there you might want to work through, but you'll get there.
I can brown the sugar. I'm an expert at browning the sugar because I'm usually the only one that has a plumber's torch handy. And so I let the rest of the family or friends do all the hard stuff and make all the custard and all that. And I just sprinkle the sugar on there and take all the glory, look good doing it, enjoy eating it. So it's a win-win for me.
I don't actually care for creme brulee myself, but, to each their own.
Well, that's good. At the Christmas party this year, I'll make sure and eat both of yours.
Thank you. You can have my creme brulee.
You can have my creme brulee. Anyways. Oh, Jake's not going to eat these.
But anyways, like I said, firm believer in learning to cook. I find it to be a fun activity. Cooking something, you end up with something delicious to eat at the end, and
hopefully, if you do it right. And
and it's a useful skill. I mean, being able to provide food for yourself, and so you don't have to go out to eat all the time, or you don't have to buy pre-made things constantly, will save you money in the long run. And some people just hate doing it, and fine. I'm not blaming you. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I still think that even if you don't like cooking, knowing how to cook one thing you enjoy eating, so that you can pamper yourself a little. So you know what? I want this. I'm having this. It's an important skill.
I'd be inclined to agree. Or as I said, someone said, "Boy, you're well." Just for the record, folks, I am a single 30-year-old man. Not that I'm trying to pick up the ladies out there. And they said, "Boy, my days in the Marine Corps." They said, "Boy, you're really a good cook there, Bell. You're really on it." And I said, "Well, I like to cook because I like to eat, and my mom doesn't live here in the barracks with me, and it just wouldn't work." And not to sound overly simplistic, folks, but it's a nice skill to have.
Yeah, and I've suffered from the same affliction. You live by yourself long enough, eventually you're going to have to learn to cook something that you like, because your mom's not there to make it for you, and you would like to have it. So I've learned to make stuffed bell peppers and how to cook a steak properly and all these sorts of things, because it's a useful skill to have for me.
True. Did I mention to you it's what would you say, smoked meat season? It'll be smoked bacon season.
Smoked bacon season coming right up.
Oh,
what? A few years back now, I wanted to say the other day, but it's been years actually, ate at a restaurant, and they had a pepper-crusted smoked, I think it was a sirloin.
Oh.
It was one of the best steaks I ever ate.
I'm intrigued.
I'm not really sure all the details of how it was manufactured, but I ended up with this beautiful medium rare piece of meat that was encrusted in coarse ground black pepper and smoked to perfection over a hickory fire, and it was delicious.
Wow.
And I kind of want to learn how to do that, but I don't even know where to start, so I'm going to have to do a little research on that, because that's not a simple thing.
I got nothing on that.
because crusting meats and not burning the crust and making it nasty, because black pepper will burn and get horrible if you treat it wrong. That's a real cool trick. So I kind of think they might have smoked it, then crusted it right at the end before serving. Very curious about that. Got to do some research. Lots of things like that I want to learn to cook.
So,
but the important thing is to not be scared to experiment. Because a lot of things I've cooked, I just read on the internet. Oh, that sounds good. I think I can do that. It's like, have you ever had Scotch eggs, Max?
I have had Scotch eggs.
I've made Scotch eggs. It's not as hard as you'd think. And damn, are they good.
Well, it's a lot of calories. It's a good wintertime food.
It's a good wintertime food. It's traditionally a bar food, freakishly enough.
Well, I can see that.
And for those of you that don't know what a Scotch egg is, prepare for your coronary. A Scotch egg is a hard-boiled egg that is then wrapped in ground sausage, rolled in breadcrumbs, and deep fried until the sausage is cooked. And it is traditionally served with spicy brown mustard.
Ooh.
And boy, are they good. Because it takes basically a quarter pound of sausage to wrap around a hard-boiled egg, as it turns out.
That's good to know. I'm going to write that down in my book of facts and figures.
The time I made these, I managed to make 4 hard-boiled eggs wrapped in sausage using 1 pound of sausage, and I barely made it there. It was like it kind of worked. A little bit of work to get that sausage to stay on there on the last one.
Huh, interesting.
It takes more sausage than you'd think to wrap up an egg, even though an egg isn't very big.
I'll write that down on my book of facts and figures of 12 inches to a foot, 3 feet to a yard, 5,280 feet to a mile. Is that?
Yeah, 5,280 feet to a mile.
And it takes roughly 1 pound,
1 pound of sausage to 4 eggs, Scotch eggs.
4 Scotch eggs. What's this?
But like I said, I had never made these before in my life. I looked up a few things, to get the gist of how it was done, and then just did it. And they came out pretty decent. As I am not a professional chef, and I've never talked to one, so I can't say if they were actually good, but I enjoyed them, and that's what mattered to me.
Well, you didn't have to go to the emergency room either.
Yeah, and I didn't have to go to the emergency room.
That's a pretty good indicator.
So you avoid both the emergency room and, violent illness. He's fine.
Yeah, you enjoy it in the process.
And it was good, so.
Anyways. So here's the other thing, folks. I don't know if y'all know this. I work many odd jobs, doing landscaping and tree work and this and that.
Itinerant wild bee surgeon.
Wild bee surgeon. I like that. Wild bee surgeon. Boy, what do you do? I like perform surgery on wild bees.
Why? Because I can.
Yeah, there you go. So pears. I'm learning about pears. This house that we're contracted to take care of, which is a beautiful place in a town north of here. I'm not going to tell you where it is to respect people's privacy. Loaded with pears.
Is it those Asian pears or is it the more traditional pear?
I believe these are some sort of traditional European pear.
Actually pear-shaped and get soft. Because the Asian pear is a lot crisper, like an apple.
True.
Tastes like a pear, texture like an apple. Absolutely hate them, don't like them, but that's just me. Yeah, we get them at the store sometimes. There's a local man that grows them here, and he sells them to us so that we can. So he grows his all organically.
Well, see, I think pears originally, and I could be wrong about this, folks. This will bear further research. Pears originally come from the Orient. They are not traditionally
could be.
From areas.
I don't know.
The Crusaders brought them a long time ago, and little by little.
They might not be from the Orient because it seems like there's references to pears in the Bible, which would put them in the Middle East as well.
Well, they used to call it Middle East the Orient sometimes, depending on who you. But
anyways,
we won't split hairs over this.
To us, the Orient now is Asia, so that makes things confusing. But I'm not really sure where pears come from, and I'm not going to Google it right now for you. You can do that. But the point is, pears. Delicious pears.
I was doing some research on these pears. We got these trees that are loaded with pears. I won't tell you how many 5-gallon buckets I've been sent home with after work. But it's looking like you can make pear cider from these and schnapps and moonshine. If I had a still, we could make some alcohol from it.
I absolutely love pear cider, to be honest with you.
Well, we might be able to get on that and see if we can't make something happen.
So I've never made pear cider, but the pear ciders I've had are real nice and refreshing. So that's the thing I got into looking at a while back was alternate woods for smoking.
Oh, whoa, this is yeah.
Oh, we're entering a dangerous territory.
Hook in the mouth, ladies and gents. I'm hooked, please.
Because you mentioned pears, it piqued a memory. And pear apparently is excellent for using on chicken and pork as a smoking wood.
Wow.
is what I'm reading on this list that I remembered I had bookmarked.
I may be sitting on a fortune. Then.
You may be sitting on a fortune of smoked pork meat products, pork and chicken smoked with pearwood. Because I got interested in this because I know more or less what the good woods where I live now are, but there's the possibility if I moved to certain other parts of the country, like what's the right wood to use for smoking there?
Yeah,
and so I got to looking some things up and seeing what I could use, and in the process found this delightfully very long list of the good smoking woods, which has some surprising entries in it actually. Apparently walnut is a interesting smoking wood.
I didn't know that. I was always told walnut was not a good smoking wood. It's great for firewood.
Said for English and black walnut is a very heavy smoke flavor. And you usually mix it with lighter, like pear or apple and almond, to use it to lighten it up. But they use it on red meats and game.
Interesting.
Yeah, things like that. I was like, really?
Well, that's intriguing.
What was another oddball one? Mulberry.
Oh, mulberry.
Yeah, they say actually is about like applewood. Surprisingly, hey, this is the list. I'm just saying.
This is interesting, folks.
Some of these were surprising.
This will have to bear further investigation on the mulberry. Once again, I may be sitting on a fortune.
You may be sitting on a fortune. The other one that really surprised me was lilac, which they say is a really light, subtle, with a hint of floralness to it, which is good. They say is really good with seafood and lamb. Using lilac wood.
I could understand.
But I'd never heard of anybody cooking anything over lilac, so that's probably...
Yeah, I can see that at a barbecue next time. What are you using there, Phil? I'm cooking on lilac stand.
And everyone stops it. What?
What?
Well, we're preparing lamb here, so it's the perfect wood.
Very well.
And birch is another one that they say is good with pretty much everything.
Birch.
Yeah, which we don't have down here, but in other parts of the world, that's an option. Because, there's big parts of the country that there's mostly pine trees, really aren't good for cooking anything.
No, they're horrible for cooking. Oh.
But cottonwood and birch are actually usable woods for smoking.
I'll reserve judgment on the cottonwood.
Cottonwood, they said, is really soft and it's a real subtle flavor. And if you use it with some chunks of a harder wood, it makes a good flavor, but you got to be sure it's dry and don't use it green. Ooh. But it says it works fine. It's a really light, subtle smoking wood. You're not going for a strong smoke flavor there, but it's okay to cook over it. Because some woods you just don't want to cook over, like cedar.
Oh.
It makes you sneeze when you eat your food.
Did you hear do you want to know my recipe for cedar plank carp?
I know your recipe for cedar plank carp, but educate the public.
I share it with the folks.
Absolutely.
So hopefully you're fishing somewhere and you can catch you a nice big carp. I've heard carp fishing has taken off big in some parts of the world.
Yeah, actually, up in is it Seattle or it was one of those Western Canadian cities, they just spent a bunch of time eradicating goldfish, which are carp, Asian carp, from a bunch of their waterways because they'd been horrendously infested. So they tried 3 times. Now they actually resorted to fish poison, which is sad. They had to do that. But this is the third and finally successful looking attempt.
Wow, it's a lot of cedar plank carp.
Yeah, it is.
So back to the recipe. You have caught a carp. Assuming you have caught a carp. You take it and fillet it and throw the guts away. You take your fillets and clean them up, wash them, prepare them, using just good basic hygiene. And then you take them and put them on a cedar plank. Now, before you put them on the cedar plank, cooking planks, which you can find, you baste the cedar plank initially with some olive oil. Olive oil is best. You put your flavors on there, your salt, pepper, rosemary usually goes well. Then you put your carp on there and season it up. You take the plank and the fish, put it over your fire and cook it for, 15, 20, 30 minutes, depending on the size of the fillet.
And the size of the fire.
While you're basting and seasoning it, and then about 20 or 30 minutes, when it looks good and done, you pull it off. You take your carp fillet off, you throw it away, and you eat the cedar plank.
Classic.
Seasoned cedar plank.
One seasoned cedar plank.
Carp on it.
With a hint of carp. I'm actually told that if you prepare them right, you can actually make carp taste good.
Well, it's not in Poland eat them.
They eat them in Poland, and apparently they eat them in Asia, and they fillet them actually somehow and get those bones out and prepare them. And it's not bad meat. It's just it's sort of obnoxious because they're really bony.
Huh.
And the meat itself it's fish. It's practically a vegetable, but
I suppose it's protein, and it's not
cardboard. And a lot of fine cuisine over the centuries, I think, has been invented out of just desperate necessity, like the escargot.
True.
I'm pretty sure no one said, you know what? Forget all this beautiful red meat. Let's eat some snails. It was probably, we're out of everything, including shoes. Let's eat these snails.
We're out of shoes. Let's eat that. I like that. I can imagine. I can only imagine some Frenchmen going, well, I've eaten my finest pair of leather shoes. We are starving. Let's eat some snails.
Some of those traditional gourmet foods I feel like are holdovers from desperate times. Someone developed a taste for all the worst things in life.
Very well. Well, that's...
there's like that cheese that's illegal with the maggots in it that they secretly serve in places.
I'm not familiar with that.
This is horrific. It's this special cheese that is deliberately infested with some variety of maggot, and they eat it, and the maggot consumes the cheese and regurgitates the cheese and makes excretes this like softened cheese, and you eat it with crackers and you just scoop it up, maggots and all, and it's horrific and technically illegal, but has, of course, this weird underground cult following of maggot cheese. I can't. It's got a fancy French name and all that. I couldn't.
No.
I don't mind bugs, but no, thank you.
Not maggots though.
Maggots are perfectly clean animals, Max.
Yeah, well, I don't like the regurgitated cheese either.
Yeah, well,
I'll regurgitate my own cheese. Thank you very much.
A little bit like the Kopi Luwak civet coffee.
Oh, well, that's...
in the same freakish vein. You're like, I don't... Why?
But the coffee, and that's the coffee that comes from the excrement of an animal?
Yeah, it's a civet. It's like a cat.
Right.
And they eat that, and it passes all the way through the digestive system, and is they eat the fruits.
Right.
And then they harvest the excrement, and pick all the beans out, and wash them thoroughly, and then roast them. Well, it's cat shit, so it's dry.
They clean them though, so
yeah, and then they wash it and dry it and roast it, and it's apparently the finest coffee money can buy. I've been tempted for a long time. You can basically buy 1 cup worth of coffee for about $20 on Amazon. I've been tempted for years to order some and try it.
Cat poo coffee.
Civet.
Yeah,
it's like a cat. Anyways, never have done it though, because I'm like $20 for a cup of coffee. No. And I have to wait till my brother-in-law's back because he's got the skills to do those really fancy pour-over brews where everything comes out real smooth and perfect. It's like, once he's back in town, if I can sync him up with being here and the coffee beans at the same time, I'll do it. But until that day, I'm going to hold off. Because I'm honestly, as horrible as it, that whole process sounds, I'm willing to try it because people have been drinking this coffee forever and say this is the finest coffee you can drink. It's very smooth, not acidic at all. So, I'm fascinated by this.
So what you're saying is,
and yet slightly
repulsed. To smuggle you a civet and some. Well, where does the coffee come from? Indonesia or Borneo or one of those exotic islands?
Lots of places. Actually, recently at the store, we were selling coffee plants. You could buy a little potted coffee plant.
I missed that. I'm a little disappointed, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I'll move on.
You can order them for not much.
Really?
Yeah, you can order a potted coffee plant and grow yourself a coffee bush. Because it can be grown as a house plant. To be honest with you, if you're willing to have a good sized house plant, shrubbery size, they're not a huge plant.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
So fascinatingly enough.
Oh, interesting. Well, I'm still considering going.
Seeing as I suffer from brown thumb, I'm probably not going to. But if you know anyone with the skills to keep a house plant alive, that'd be a cool house plant.
Well, it's kind of like cooking.
It might take some practice.
It's funny though. You mentioned plants that are somewhat delicacies that come from the excrement of animals. Kind of on another tangent here. Growing chili pequeans this year.
Oh, yeah.
Chili pequeans are supposedly the original chili plant. They grow wild in Mexico and Guatemala, Central America. That's just I think even into South America. And they look like a shrub, folks. They really look like a weed. I would imagine there are a lot of people that would pull them out of their gardens thinking, this is a weed, get it out of here. And they seem to do best. And I have no science to back this up, but I'm currently researching this.
This means you might be going to Google it soon.
They seem to propagate and spread best through being consumed by birds, and birds passing the seeds through their excrement. I've located a leaf near this chili pequin bush that appears to have a large amount of bird excrement on it with several seeds, and we'll be planting them. There's probably a dozen seeds, I would guess, roughly, and we're probably going to plant them just to see
Yeah.
if they'll come up.
That sounds like legitimate science. A lot of plants have to go through animal digestive tracts to be able to propagate.
But I was researching other stuff, and I thought, wow, they do better when they go through an animal.
What fascinates me about chili peppers, though, is that how big that plant family is.
It's huge.
Because most peppers are part of the nightshade family, but so are potatoes and tomatoes, which allows for a lot of really hilarious crossbreeding and hybriding and grafting. There's a company that you can order these plants where they graft together a tomato and a potato plant. They call them ketchup and taters plants because you put this thing in the ground, it grows, you harvest tomatoes from it earlier in the year, and then come the end of the year, you dig up the bottom of it, and it's potatoes.
Wow, weird science.
Yeah, well, and it's just grafting because they're within close enough in the same plant family, you can graft the two plants together. They're not a hybrid, unfortunately, which would be awesome if you could just plant them from seeds. They haven't gotten that far yet. I imagine someone's trying desperately to get those two traits together in the same plant. But it sort of amazes me that potatoes, tomatoes, all the hot peppers for the most part, and nightshade, belladonna nightshade, the most poisonous plant in the world, are all related.
Wow. Dang.
Yeah, it's astonishing. Botany is a freakish science that I don't really want to get into.
Yeah, I don't want to dive too deep into that.
But it's an interesting rabbit hole to go down to see all the plants that are related to each other when you start with tomatoes and branch out.
Wow, that's terrifying. Huh.
So anyways, Max, now that we've covered all that, how jaded are you today?
On a scale of 1 to 10.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say I'm a 5.5.
5.5. He's right past the fulcrum, folks. I think I'm like a 3 because I've been having a good week.
Well, I'm having a decent week. It's not horrible. I'm sure you know Hugh Hefner died. But
he did?
Yeah, he just died. 91 years old.
Holy shit! I didn't check the news.
Yeah, I heard about it on the radio. And I can't say I'm surprised. That dirty old codger is.
He's 91.
Hopefully gone on to a decent place. The joke was, they said, "Oh well, he's moved on to a better place now." And someone said, "No, I'm sure the Playboy Mansion was a better place." But this is a family show, where we try and be family friendly here, folks. So we won't.
Anyways, I forgot to tell you we normally have a quote. Do you have a quote from anyone you'd like to use right now?
Oh man, I have several quotes. I just have to.
Well, because we just learned that Hugh Hefner died, I'll quote something he said on Twitter once.
Oh boy! Because
someone asked him on Twitter and said, "Hugh Hefner, how do you get so many bitches?" And his response was, "Because I don't call them bitches. I have a lot of girlfriends because I treat them like
ladies."
Women." I was like, from that man, I find that surprisingly, and I liked that. I was surprised that he would have that kind of stand-up-ishness there.
Yeah, class, a little bit of.
For the kind of man he was surprisingly classy.
So, well, I have a quote, and it's since we're approaching Halloween, I was watching clips from Young Frankenstein.
Oh.
And of course we go back to while he's giving the lecture, and he says, "My grandfather's work was doo-doo," referring to the great original Dr. Frankenstein.
Well, anyways, all those strange things being said, if you liked what you heard here today, feel free to follow us on Twitter to be updated when new podcasts are posted. If you want to send us a comment, email proteuspodcast@gmail.com. And as always, remember to subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher and Google Play and other places fine podcasts are purveyed. All that being said, I've been Jacob.
I'm still Max.
And we have been the Proteus Podcast. Good night, everyone.